get hold of. I mean, you can go to school gate or in the street shops, and they're all, you know, selling them to the kids.
Fears that if he ever tried drugs, he'd end up addicted to them, and he'd die.
But obviously I worry about them all the time. It's, you can't even say, well, we're safe at school, can you?
I think like a lot of people think that it's okay, just in the beginning it's just a kick and they try and they don't realise the dangers involved afterwards.
I'd like to know what to do if they are. What do you do? Who do you turn to?
Drugs are a real worry for parents, aren't they? Will your children use them in the future? Are they using them already? And what will you do if you find out that they are? In this programme, we're going to answer some of your questions about drugs, how they could affect you and your children, and what the real dangers are, not just the myths and sensationalist stories you've read in the papers. The first thing to know is that all drugs are different. They have different effects on the user and they carry different risks. What those effects and risks are depends on a variety of factors. How much is taken, for instance, what they're taken with, even the mood the person was in at the time. The substances misused most often by teenagers are the ones they can get hold of easily and cheaply, like solvents, which are conveniently close to hand. Solvent misuse is generally known as glue sniffing, but it's not just glue that can be sniffed. In the average home, there are about 30 sniffable products. Aerosols and lighter fuel are the most common and unexpected of those.
Well, sniffing's not a very accurate word, really. People either take them put them in a plastic bag and put the plastic bag over their nose and their mouth and inhale the fumes that way. Or, and what is more dangerous, they take an aerosol or a butane gas cylinder and spray it directly into their mouth. That's a particularly dangerous method.
Most children who try solvents are just experimenting, as they are in other areas of their life. They usually give up very quickly. But unfortunately, just trying it once can be one time too many for some curious children.
One danger is inhaling from a large plastic bag, maybe having it completely over your head. You can suffocate, or even if you're using a small bag and you become unconscious, the bag might get stuck around your face. That's an obvious danger. One particular danger with using aerosols and butane gas cylinders and spraying them directly into the mouth is that there's a cooling effect on the tissues of the throat. This can cause swelling and the throat can get blocked.
You don't get your name on the roll by a certain date, you also are.
Each year, over 100 children die from solvent misuse. About a quarter of those were probably using solvents for the first time.
I think parents know their own children best, and they will notice any change in their behaviour. Some things that are obvious to look for are like cans of aerosol, empty aerosol cans under the bed, or plastic bags with glue in lying around, that kind of thing. Other things that might be indicative are spots around the nose and mouth, which is sometimes called glue sniffer's rash, but this isn't very common, and of course it might be acne. There are many things that young people do, like staying out late sometimes perhaps, or being a bit secretive, or being uncommunicative, or even stealing money, that may be just a normal part of teenagers growing up, but might actually be a sign of glue sniffing.
Prevention is always better than cure, but it would be difficult to clear all the sniffable products out of your house, and even if you did, they're still on sale in every high street. So it's a matter of being aware of the risks to your child and alert for any warning signs. Solvent misuse can start as young as 7, with 13 or 14 the peak age for experimenting.
Most young people will never try solvents. Only about 1/10 of young people will even experiment with them. Most of those won't go on to use very often. But of those who experiment, it can just as likely be girls as well as boys, and they can be people from any part of the country or from any social class or income level.
By far the most commonly encountered drug nowadays is cannabis and cannabis resin. This can exist in a number of forms, and the most popular that we see nowadays are these varieties here. However, in normal use, one would see the resin in sizes such as this. Cannabis is a plant, and it normally exists in a dried form. For example, a leaf like this, or more finely chopped, such as this. Another variety of cannabis that we sometimes encounter is known as hash oil or hashish oil. Cannabis and cannabis resin are given a variety of names. For example, hash, hashish, marijuana, bang, ganja, grass.
Cannabis is the most commonly used illegal drug. Adolescents may start experimenting with it in their mid to late teens.
No, they say soft drugs doesn't lead on to hard, but I think they do.
It never done me any harm. I never got addicted to it. But that's to say it wouldn't affect somebody else. I'm quite strong-willed.
I think the issue is that when people perhaps use cannabis, that other drugs may be available and people may be offered or pressured into taking other drugs, and some people may actually move from cannabis onto trying other things and experimenting, but there is no evidence that using cannabis automatically leads on to other drugs.
The most common way of using cannabis is to crumble the brown resin, mix it with tobacco and smoke it in a cigarette paper. The smoke has a very strong herbal smell. A piece of rolled up cardboard is often used to make a filter.
Ecstasy, it goes in all the acid clubs. These kids are buying it in the clubs for between £5 and £15.
The older ones go out and try to entice these children when they're out for a good time.
These preparations here are examples of MDMA or ecstasy. They can exist in either tablet or capsule preparations in a variety of colours, shapes and sizes. It is very easy to confuse some of these pills with proprietary preparations such as aspirin and paracetamol.
Phil? Philip?
These are examples of preparations containing amphetamine. Amphetamine usually exists in the form of coloured powders or again in tablets and capsules. Amphetamine powders usually come in a piece of folded magazine paper, commonly known as a wrap. Amphetamine, or speed as it is sometimes called, may be swallowed, injected or sniffed. LSD, normally known as acid or tabs, exists in two basic forms. The main variety comprises thin card or paper squares, usually embossed with brightly coloured motifs or characters. It also exists in the form of microdots, which are usually sandwiched between tape or sometimes in larger tablet forms. And then we come to the small mushrooms, commonly known as magic mushrooms, which contain hallucinogenic drugs. These mushrooms are picked and dried and may be eaten or made into an infusion like a tea. Heroin, commonly referred to as H or smack, is usually encountered in the form of fine, pale brown or darker brown powders. It is normally found in small paper packages commonly known as deals. Heroin, like amphetamine, may also be injected. The heroin powder is mixed with water in the bowl of a spoon and the bowl heated. This can be sucked up into a syringe, and the bowl of the spoon also contains a small filter, such as a piece of cotton wool, so that solid particles aren't taken up. The underside of the spoon is also blackened from the heating process. Cocaine or coke is a crystalline white powder. It is usually taken by placing on the surface of a mirror and sniffing through a straw or something like a rolled up banknote. Crack is a concentrated form of cocaine which appears in the form of wax-like lumps or rocks. It is usually smoked.
Only a tiny proportion of school-aged kids are ever going to come into contact with hard drugs like cocaine and heroin. Most kids that do come into contact with drugs will just be experimenting with them and are not going to end up using them on a regular basis or coming to any serious harm through them. Having said that, it is of course important to take the problem seriously, and it's right to be concerned about it.
I'm not sure, apart from sort of changing your behaviour, really don't know what sort of actual bodily health risks you suffer from.
There's an awful lot of bad things inside the drugs. They were made of unknown things that can possibly kill them rather than the drug itself.
Well, one of the risks associated with drug taking is the risk of the substance itself. Now, some drugs do have toxic effects in their own right, especially if taken in large quantities, but I think the most worrying aspect is the constituents of street drugs, because then you're not to know the dosage of the drug in the powder or what it might be mixed with, and some of the adulterants that are used in street drugs can be harmful in their own right, especially if injected. Especially with the needles, then they share them, the syringes, and nobody cares where they get them from or who's had them before them, and then there's a chance of AIDS that way.
Another risk is to do with the method which is used to take the drug, and I think we're all aware these days of the risks of injecting, particularly to do with HIV and hepatitis. Also the risks associated with smoking drugs, because some drugs like cannabis are mixed with tobacco, and then the child is going to be in danger of becoming addicted to tobacco.
I think they're very serious risks, because especially with ecstasy and things, you're not necessarily from the drugs, but if you get out of control you can easily cause damage to yourself.
Thirdly, there are the risks of the circumstances in which the drug is taken, and obviously it's a different matter if you're taking a drug in a room with a lot of other people about compared to taking it, sniffing something on the top of a roof or near a canal or near busy traffic.
Look, I've read about it in the paper. It can be very dangerous.
Yeah, well, all my friends do it, and they're all right. I'm careful, aren't I?
Well, I don't like it at all. I hope you don't take these with alcohol.
No, of course not, Dad. You can't get...
There are the risks of mixing different substances, things like alcohol and amphetamine or cocaine and amphetamine, when mixed together, have a much more toxic effect than when used separately.
Drugs can harm users physically and alter their behaviour, and then there's the risk with illegal drugs that those involved could be caught and prosecuted. Thanks.
Society has the view that there has to be controls on the use, possession of virtually all drugs, and the law will put different types of constraints and different types of controls on those drugs.
And these shops, to me, just don't care. If they can sell lighter fluid to 16-year-olds that can't smoke, what they're selling it for? How do they get away with selling it?
Well, with solvents, there is no control over the possession or the use of the solvent. There are controls over how they can be sold to certain ages of people. For example, if a shopkeeper attempts to sell a solvent suspecting or knowing it's going to be used for abuse, he commits an offence, and it does carry quite high penalties as far as that's concerned. But apart from that one constraint, there is no other legal control over it at all.
Because cannabis is considered a soft or less serious drug, first-time offenders will probably get off with a fine, though someone who's caught dealing, that's selling or giving it to someone else, could end up in jail.
Parents have different responsibilities according to the nature of the drug that they may suspect their child is using. For example, with cannabis, if they allow or suspect that their child is smoking cannabis within their property, they actually commit a specific offence as far as that is concerned in allowing their premises to be used for that purpose.
Most other substances are called hard drugs and risk tougher penalties. Your child might not know that when he or she sells or gives a few ecstasy tablets to a friend, it's an offence that could carry a maximum sentence of 14 years.
I'd go up the wall if I found either of mine using drugs. What also worries me is, how do I stand it?
In simply touching the drug and taking the drug into their possession, they can be committing an offence of being in possession of a controlled drug. It depends what they next do with it. And they have a number of options that they can exercise. They can simply destroy the drug. And if they're destroying the drug with a view to stopping their child committing an offence, i.e. using or possessing the drug, then that is all right. They're lawful in doing that. If they take the drug to pass on to another outside agency who is again authorised to have it, such as the police, then again they're committing no offence. But in involving the police in this sort of situation, they do have to appreciate that the police are an enforcement agency.
Why do children do it? Well, why do you use alcohol or tobacco or drink coffee or tea or take tranquilizers? Because that's drug taking too, even if it is legal. You may have a coffee as a pick-me-up or a beer to help you relax and forget pressures from home or work. It's the same for young people, only more so. They may have their own kind of pressures and problems they want to escape from. Perhaps they feel lonely or don't feel good about themselves, the way they are or the way they look.
I think generally as an escape from the real world. Peer group pressure, so like their friends do it, so I think, okay, I'll just try it, they want me to try it, can't do any harm.
Fit in with the crowd. General make them feel good, I suppose, if that's what I think.
Adolescents are going through a particularly tricky, vulnerable phase of their life. If you bear that in mind and encourage them to let you know their worries, you might help to remove the need for drugs.
A child may use drugs for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, maybe just a chance encounter, that they were somewhere with friends or that they were at a party or disco and it was simply there. I mean, availability is actually a key factor in why somebody might actually use drugs for the first time.
Using the drugs in order maybe to blot out some horrible experience that they've had. Maybe they're being bullied at school, maybe they've had the death of a relative perhaps, maybe there's some problem in their family, maybe their parents are breaking up, and this might lead them to use drugs or solvents in order to forget perhaps.
There are other reasons too. Drugs offer a thrill. Some teenagers want excitement, and drugs are cheaper than hang gliding. Or they may be going through a rebellious phase. Because they know drugs are forbidden and dangerous, they'll try them.
Where do the children get them from? How are they very readily available to children?
I know that they're a danger. I mean, what I'd like to know is how people can give them to kids so easily.
The strange man on the corner of the street, that is a view you have sort of from the television or whatever, but I don't know, friends of friends, possibly.
Some people imagine there are pushers lurking at the school gates or on street corners, waiting for an opportunity to sell the children drugs. But this isn't what happens in reality. Most drug users get their supplies from friends or friends of friends. Of course, you can't tell if any of your child's friends might be selling drugs, and making inquiries could make them feel you're interfering. But you can be alert to the possibility and talk to your child if you feel there's something to be concerned about. The reassuring fact of the matter is that not many children experiment with illegal drugs, and of the ones who do, only a very small number go on to develop problems or become addicted. That's not to say that addiction is not a serious problem, it is, but thankfully it's quite rare.
I feel that parents should really have a relationship with their children where they can, first of all, talk to their children. The children can trust them enough to say if there's something really worrying them, that they can disclose and say, well, look, this is how I'm feeling and this is what's happening.
Whether or not you think your child is taking drugs, it's important to speak about drugs with them. It's the best way to ensure that they don't start. So discuss it openly and explain why you've brought the subject up. But be prepared for difficult reactions.
Yeah, so what? I mean, I've only smoked a few times.
I'm not trying to interfere, love. Just want to talk about it a bit.
There's nothing to say. It's my life.
I know it's your life.
I think I would know, but then I'm sure all parents say that. They think they'd know.
It's difficult because kids are very clever these days, you know, they tell you very little and they tell you exactly what you as a parent want to know and want to hear.
You know, there'd be quite a few things that would tell you he's not acting normal, he's taking drugs.
If only you could tell. Unfortunately, it's not so simple. Many of the symptoms, being moody and irritable, losing their appetite, sleeping a lot, could be just part of growing up. There are no hard and fast rules. All you can do is keep an eye open. You're the best judge of your child's behaviour, so you'll notice changes. A sudden change in lifestyle might be a clue, or seeing a new set of friends.
I don't know who he does see nowadays. Does he tell you?
I'll never know who's who.
It's not like him to be this mysterious. He didn't used to be. I think we should talk to him.
No, leave him be. He doesn't want us sticking our noses in. I know what I was like at his age.
Well, I don't know.
One's tendency is to go berserk, perhaps, or really berate the child, tell them off, threaten them all kinds of things. And that isn't the best way. I think it's really important to contain your panic, contain your anxiety, and have as calm a talk as you can manage with the child.
It's very easy to get bogged down in just looking at the drug and not looking at perhaps why a child would use something and the associated problems.
A good way into the subject could be mentioning why you yourself take painkillers or drink alcohol, to show them you understand. Tell them what you feel the acceptable limits are, but don't be too negative or disapproving. Teenagers may react by taking drugs so they can get your attention. They may start seeing drug taking as a way of getting at you. If you approach the whole subject calmly, there's a better chance that drugs will lose some of their attraction. They won't be the forbidden fruit anymore.
Why did you start, love?
Dunno, really. Just wanted to see what it was like.
Did you like it then?
It's alright.
You do it with your new friends, do you?
Me and Dave do.
Dave who? Who's Dave?
Where'd you go to sniff?
Under the bridge.
So, that's where you go.
That's where you go after school?
Yeah.
And it makes you feel good, does it?
Yeah. It's great. We have a real laugh.
I suppose most of your friends. What about Ian Jacobs? Does he go sniffing too?
No. He doesn't hang around with me anymore. I'm not...
Not what?
Not clever enough or something.
Teenagers may have worries or problems that even the most caring parents aren't aware of. Nick and Tessa Phillips had no idea that Sean felt so rejected by his friend Ian. Talking things over can help a lot. It can make your child feel less anxious about their problems, and it shows you care. Showing that you're on their side makes it easier for them to cope. It may make all the difference.
Well, look, love, I mean, do you feel you can say no to him? That you don't want to?
I don't know.
Well, couldn't you...
Couldn't you suggest you do something else, like roller skating or something?
Well, that's too far to go.
I'll take you. In the car.
That's a good idea.
Distracting them from drugs or solvent taking and encouraging other interests is half the battle. It makes it easier for them to reject drugs and helps them gain self-respect.
Talk to them because they need talking. If you go in and you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that, why you do it being so stupid, they can't answer it themselves. They need help and they do need guidance.
Don't make the mistake that we did, especially me. I was very, very angry.
because I was frightened and didn't understand, the same with Corinne.
You're worried about your son or daughter, you found they're taking drugs or you think they might be, you need to talk to somebody. Your family and friends may be the first people you turn to, but if you feel you need support or advice, you may want to speak to their teacher, youth worker, family doctor or other community services. And if you need further help, they should be able to refer you to parents groups, special clinics in hospitals and local community drugs teams. You'll find information about all of these in the booklet that comes with this video.
You don't need to take drugs or even do that to make yourself feel good. There are lots of other ways, going out with friends, going to parties. It's not just drugs that make you feel good.
Remember, most young people never get involved with illegal drugs, but it's as well to be prepared. Talking openly to your child may prevent problems ever arising in the first place.